Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Attract and Stand Out podcast. I'm your host, Darlene Holly, and I am so excited for today. I have with me Brenda Barbour. She is one of the hosts, along with her sister, Elaine Curry, of Body Wealth podcast, the Body Wealth, I can't talk today, the Body Wealth podcast, which is an amazing conversation. It's just I had a chance to listen to a couple episodes, and I just loved the heart of the conversations, Brenda, that you and your sister share, and the women that you bring into the show, and just sharing their heart and the things that we go through as women. And then with the special highlight, I know you're talking with Black women and specific things that come up for them. Like, I just love that you're diving deep into conversations that I feel like we need to have and are like, we're starting to have them, but you're really opening the horizon and really bringing conversation into play that need to be happening and need to be
Thank you
happening
so
more
much.
so they can be heard. So welcome to the show, Brenda. I'm so excited to have you here today.
I'm excited to talk to you, Darlene.
Yeah, thanks so much for being here. So before we dive in, I would love for you just to take us back. Tell me about the day that you and Elaine were sitting around and we're like, we should start a podcast. Let's do it. Like, what did that look like for you, and how did it kind of come to flourish?
It is just the convergence of so many things that it's serendipity. So Elaine and I are 12 months apart in age, and we moved around a lot growing up. So when sisters say they're best friends, we really mean it, because when you move to upstate New York, then Cincinnati, Ohio, and all these places as a kid, really the only person who's consistent in your childhood is that sister who's with you. So Elaine and I are best friends. We always wanted to do a project together. Um, in my life, I had cancer 3 times in 5 years. I was diagnosed with cancer, so colon cancer and breast cancer. I'm fine. I'm coming up on my 5-year cancer free for breast cancer and 10-year cancer free for colon cancer. So
That is
I'm fine.
amazing.
And of course, as my big sister, Elaine, helped me navigate those things. But one of the things we both knew is that Black women, especially, we have worse health outcomes in the US than almost any other population. And so I knew it was breast cancer, then I knew it was colon cancer, but it's also diabetes, heart disease, childbirth, it's all these things.
Yeah.
And neither one of us are doctors, but we're like, well, what can we do? What can we contribute to support our community? And one of the things we realized is that, when you're sitting around talking to a girlfriend and they talk about something they're doing, like, oh, I just got a bone density scan. And, because at our age, we might have osteoporosis. And you think about things in a different way when your girlfriend tells you versus you read about it.
Yeah.
So we were going to create this book of all the things you could do or should do. At 40, you should get a colonoscopy, and this is why, and this is our experience. And here's a journal, here's where you can write your questions for your doctors and all this. And we were brainstorming all the things a tool that would be helpful to us. And we were talking to Elaine's daughter-in-law, and we were just telling stories about our childbirth and things like that. And she was like, this is not a book. This is a podcast.
Like, we have a lot to say.
Not just us, it's just everyone we talk to. So
Yeah.
we were like, oh, that's an interesting thought. And I used to work for a large international organization, and I hosted a podcast for them. So I knew how to host a podcast. I didn't know how to produce a podcast, but so that was sort of the motivation. And we did the first season saying, let's see if anyone cares about these women's stories. And really what we found is every woman has wisdom to share and inspiration to share. And, we've heard from so many different communities, not just Black women, who are like, we love listening to these stories because they make me think about my own health.
Yeah. And it's one of those things, I think you kind of alluded to it too. Like, every woman has a story. Every woman has something going on, especially, we're in 2024. I feel like, and I'm in my mid, little late to 40s, where like my body, I can tell, is changing. I'm noticing things that are just different, whether it's perimenopausal or it's not. I'm not sure yet if I'm ready to admit it or say it out loud yet, but like, it's coming. But I feel like every woman I talk to, there's something going on. And if it's not them specifically, it's their sister, their best friend, their mom. And there's just like this big, it feels like a health crisis. Like, I feel like it's getting worse and worse and worse. And what's interesting is, I feel like we're hearing about it more. We're talking about it more. Like we're having the
Mhm.
conversations and we're starting to have them, but it feels like it's almost getting heavier as we're
Yeah.
having these conversations. Have you noticed, like with the people that you're talking to, like a similar like theme that it feels like it's just getting bigger and bigger? And like, how do we grab control of it?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think two things. We can't just talk about it because that produces stress. So the talking has to be followed by the doing.
Yeah.
So I think what I love about the conversations that we're having, and they're filled with laughter and, jokes and things like that, is that we are getting ideas about things we want to do differently. There's a woman who we had an episode with, Monica, who talked about choosing to be a vegan. And so that whole episode was, well, how do you live the vegan lifestyle? What made you go into that choice? And she's like, my mother, my aunt, all these people had a big bag of pills. I had to go to the pharmacy and pick up a big bag of pills for all
Wow.
these conditions that run in our family. And so you could make that like really depressing and overwhelming that everyone in my family has diabetes, heart disease, high cholesterol, et cetera. But what she chose to do is say, and therefore, what am I going to do to decrease my probability of having to take that big bag of pills? And so for me, the light on the other side of the heaviness of all of the bad news is that we have a lot of power to change it. So I am in menopause. I'm deeply in menopause, and I've been lifting weights, which is I'm not a weightlifting girly, but I started doing that
Like, but I'm
because
doing it.
right. First of all, I want to be strong, but second of all, I want to avoid problems in my old age. And so I'm not a gym person at all, but I have a whole bunch of weights in my basement. I go down there, I put my music on, and I lift weights. And who would have thought at this age that I would be someone starting to lift weights? But it's really it's the highlight of my day.
Yeah, I know I've heard a few women lately talking about like lifting weights, especially like in our 40s and 50s. And
Mhm.
it's something that I feel like I did in my 20s. I would go to the gym and do like body
Right.
pump classes and then it's I don't know if it's just with like the seasons of having kids and not having as much time to get to the gym. Like I don't have weights in my house. I probably should get some because if I'm realistic, I know I'm going to work out at home way before I actually get
Right.
to the gym just with between work and kids and sports and all the activities. I'm like the season of life just feels like it's all consuming at different points. And like how do I for me I have to work out what I call like the nooks and crannies of the day.
Yeah, yeah.
Like
Well,
it's not like a
that's
big
the key. I mean, because especially when you still have young children at home, so many women, they give everything to their children, give everything to their families, right? We're caretaking, we're caretaking, we're caretaking, but we need to take care of ourselves. And so I'm reading this book, Fit CEO, and she talks about less is more. And one of the ideas about less is more is even with exercise. If
yeah,
you're thinking, I got to go to the gym and, do a 90-minute Zumba class or whatever, you may not do that. But if
no,
you have some 5-pound weights just in your office
yeah.
and you get off of this call and you just go do something like that, little bites of exercise are also really good for you.
Yeah. I've noticed for myself that if I move in the morning, it sets my day
Mhm.
up for success. And so one of the things that I get to my youngest is in fifth grade this year, and his school is close enough that we can walk him that I walk him to school. And it's such I just love it. Like I get to get outside in nature, there's sunshine, fresh air. I get to have conversations with my son and kind of, just check in while we're just walking. So it doesn't feel like it's like a big conversation. It's just random conversations and it kind of is lighthearted and there's something about like walking back to the house after I've dropped him off at school where I'm like, okay, I'm at work now. I'm not at home anymore because I work from home. So for me, it's kind of like a transition staging
Oh,
as well.
cool.
But it sets my day so much differently than the days where we're running late and I'm like, forget it, we're not going to walk, we're going to drive to school and I drive him really quick and come back in. I just don't feel settled and I feel like the rest of the day kind of goes haywire and can go
Yeah.
really fast. Like there's just something special I think of like slowing life down a little bit and kind of
Yes.
enjoying those moments. And I'm already like dreading when he goes to middle school next year because it's not in a situation where we can walk him to school. And I'm like, oh my gosh, like how am I going to get outside in nature first thing in the morning? Like, what's that going to look like? And then just that special time together that I get to talk with
Yeah,
them. Like it means so much because they grow so darn fast. I'm like,
they do.
the days are long, but the
The
years
years
go
are
by
short.
so quickly.
Yeah, I can't believe my children are 27 and 25. I don't know how that happened.
Yeah. Like we blink and all of a sudden.
Mhm.
So one of the things I love about your podcast specifically is you're bringing real life stories of women who are, going through life and just the things that happen to them and sharing those pieces versus I don't and maybe correct me if I'm wrong, but from what I noticed, I didn't see that like you had like big experts or anything coming on.
No
So
experts. I
I
mean, some of the women are experts, but they're not on the podcast to talk about their expertise. They're there to talk about their
expertise.
personal stories. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that you're weaving in like those beautiful stories of like what they're going through. Can you think of one of the episodes that really just like tugged at your heart the most and really like felt like I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing and showing up and like getting these stories pulled from amazing places?
Well, we're recording season 3 right now. It's not going to release till January, but there's some just from this week that we've recorded that have really tugged at my heart. I don't know if you want me to talk about those because they're not yet released, or I can talk about some from previous seasons.
Get us excited for the new season. Tell us
Oh, okay.
something
So
that's coming.
we just spoke to a woman. I'm going to tear up because she had a very difficult relationship with her mother growing up. Her mother had her when she was in high school, when the mom was in high school. And because of that and other circumstances, she said there was no softness in her mother.
Mm.
And then later in life, the mother married much later and had a child with her husband. And she was very soft with that new child. And that was hard for the woman that we just had on the podcast. Her name is Ashley. That was hard for Ashley to see her mother being soft when she didn't have that. And, mother-daughter relationships can be so complicated for so many different reasons. So Ashley said, she always said she was never going to have children because she thought she would be a horrible mom.
Oh my gosh.
Which is, there's lots of reasons not to have children, and not everybody should have children, but it's sad to not have children based on your childhood experience. So she's in therapy and her mother's in therapy, and they are taking baby steps toward building an adult relationship with each other. And because on the Body Wealth podcast, we talk about mental health as well as physical well-being. And so what touched me about this is in the episode, she said, you know what? Maybe I will have children. Maybe I could be a good mother. And it felt so special to me because the idea of unpacking childhood stresses and then building the life you want to build as opposed to just building a life in reaction to our childhood is so powerful to me. And if more women think about, oh, maybe I should get some therapy, maybe I should unpack this thing about this relationship with this person because they listened to the Ashley episode, then that just makes me so happy.
Yeah, it's such a win when we can, like, I feel like I share my stories in hopes that I'm going to inspire somebody else and be able to, help them navigate it a little bit easier.
Right.
Because I always learn things the hard way. I feel like, so I'm hoping that like
you used to learn things the hard way, not
I
any not in the
definitely
future.
used to learn things the hard way. Younger Darlene, for sure. Like I would rebel at any cost. Like if you told me to go left, I was like, nope, we're going right, and here's why.
And we'll make it work.
Yeah. But
Can I tell you another episode? I just thought of it, and it relates to breast cancer. This is another woman, Ricky, from coming in season 3. She was diagnosed with breast cancer, and her oncologist told her she had 3 months to live. And she was like, no, my daughter's a freshman in college. It's not my time to go. And she did her own research and found a clinical trial and got into the clinical trial and has now lived a decade past that 3-month diagnosis. And so she was so inspired by sort of beating cancer that she decided that she was going to start an alliance. And so now she has created an alliance where people can find clinical trials, that she's got funding to go take a van to do breast cancer screening. And where does she take the van? To churches and Black sorority parties and places where Black women are, not, not to a healthcare center, but she's trying to find people who may not be getting the screening. So just from her experience, she not only did she conquer her own cancer, but she created something to help other women too.
I'm always in awe of the women that go through some hard life stuff, and then like they come out the other side and their mission and their heart changed during that process, and they want to bring everybody else on board, and they want to make sure they're getting checked, and like they start advocating in such a bigger way, because I mean there's so many ways we can look at life, right? Like there's the
Yeah.
times where we're going through something and we've, we handle it really maybe poorly, or we have a really tough time handling it. And then there's other women who I just I'm like they're making change in this world. Like they're bringing love into the community, and they're doing things that probably feel really uncomfortable, going out
Mm-hmm.
there and advocating and, being allies. And like the story of her, like bringing a vehicle to a place where like the woman wouldn't expect them to go. Like we all know, like, okay, if we need to go get a mammogram, we're going to go down to our local breast
Right.
scanning imaging center, and it's uncomfortable and it's awkward and we don't want to pick up the phone and make the phone call. But how cool, like those women who probably would have never even stepped foot in
Right.
until possibly it was too late, or it was way past, like they could have caught it earlier for earlier detection. And then
Mm-hmm.
she's bringing, the resources right to their neighborhood, right to the front door where they
I
can get
love it.
access. Like
Yeah.
it's so inspiring to hear when like we go through this unbelievably hard time in our lives, and then we're able to bring so much good and joy from it.
Yep.
It's
You almost have to, first of all, when you get a serious diagnosis, it's such a, for me at least, it was a moment of reflection.
yeah,
Like, wow, when you face your own mortality, you have to think about, this sounds like too grunt, but you think about the meaning of life and what am I leaving in this world if I leave this world? And
yeah,
so I think a lot of people who do face a serious diagnosis, when you come out on the other side, you do think differently about your life and what you want to give to the world.
yeah. I live every day with an autoimmune disease, and I have since my early
Mhm.
20s been diagnosed with it and gone through treatments. I've had hip replacements. Some
Wow.
of my community might not even know this. They might be hearing this on the first time on the podcast. Like I don't talk a ton about it. I haven't found a way for myself. Like it comes up like on one-on-one calls, but like, creating
Mm.
content and sharing episodes, I don't talk about it a ton. But like I was sharing, like even walking my son to school, like part of me really enjoys that because I don't know that I'll walk my whole entire life. Like there's been times where I've been on bedridden and I wasn't able to walk. It's too painful to stand up in the morning, and it takes like 20, 30 minutes before my body will kind of settle in and I can kind of push through. But the pain level like my tolerance is pretty high. Like I don't even
Hmm.
know that I'm in pain half the time. It's just what it is and it's the norm of it. And like I don't take it for granted. Like, I don't wanna take it for granted. Like, I've had days where I couldn't get out of bed, and now when I'm walking my son to school, like, the fact that I get to walk him to school, like, feels really great because I don't know what, I'm in my mid-40s. I plan to live till I'm, like, 97. So,
Yay.
I've got a lot of life left, and I'm hoping
Hmm.
that I'm able to walk when I'm 97 as well, and I can, like, figure out how to make that work. But it's hard. Like, we have so much life happening. We're so busy. We're taking on so many things. And I know especially the I've done a lot of networking in my community with like moms groups and different things like that with having kids. I have 4 kids.
Mm.
I've got 2 adult children and then I have 2 kids at home. And so I can like life is always I've always been momming. I've always had that as a piece of my puzzle. My oldest I had right after I graduated high school,
Hmm.
and like so many women put themselves last because they've got
Right.
partners and kids and careers and businesses, and they want to support in the community and volunteer and do all these different things. Like what are some things that you have found for ways for us to find I like to think of it as like a flow. Like how do we find the best flow for ourselves so that we're taking care of ourselves and making sure that we're our number one, but then we can still show up for the people that we love? Like what are some maybe conversations you've had or just your own thoughts even on how do we do that so we can take care of us?
Well, for me, it's habits. I'm a big believer in habits, so my husband knows that the first hour that I wake up in the morning is mine. I've got an hour-long routine. Unless it's, I don't know, maybe Michelle Obama calling,
Let's just call it.
I don't take a meeting before 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
So I get up at 7. I get up at 7, sometimes 6. But that first hour when I wake up is me. I'm going to do some reading and meditation. I'm going to do my exercise. I'm going to have 32 ounces of water before 9 o'clock in the morning. And then my day starts. And so the first thing is can you set an agreement with the people in your life that there's a period of time that's just yours? And this actually came up with another person that we spoke to for season 3, who was a woman who was experiencing postpartum depression. It was really, really serious. Like she loved her son, but he would be crying and she couldn't even get the energy up to do anything or care about the fact that her newborn baby was crying. So she went and got some help. And one of the things that her doctor prescribed was an hour walk in fresh air and sunshine every day without the baby. So it's not like you got the stroller and you're going for a walk and you're still worrying about the baby's going to cry or something like that. But it was because it was prescribed by her doctor. Her husband was like, okay, every day when I get home, you're going to go for a walk outside. And just that and a couple of other things really addressed the postpartum depression. Of course, different people need different things. Some people need medications, whatever. But for her, it was this idea that I'm at home with this newborn. This is my first child. I'm so overwhelmed. And every day I'm going to have an hour by myself to go for a walk. That was really special to her. And I think, so again, making agreements with the people in your life of what is the time that is dedicated to you.
Yeah. I love that piece of like making agreements because I think I advocate for myself now in a way that works for our family. But I can definitely remember like when especially my younger two, when they were younger, I was married with my husband and I felt like I had to do it all. Like I felt like I had to be, whether it's Wonder Woman or whatever you want to call it. Like I had like that syndrome of I need to be everything for everyone and I need to, be the one that tucks my kids in bed at night. I want to make the dinners. I want to pick them up from school. I want to do those things. And I was
But
also
it's too much.
that I
It's too
was
much.
it was like I was finding resentment in
Yeah.
how I was showing up. Like it wasn't, even though I wanted to do it, I wasn't enjoying it anymore. And so I had
Yeah.
to find ways to be like, okay, how do we all chip in? How do we have different responsibilities? And even, today, like not today, right this second, but like in general, like the season of my life, like there's times where I'm like, you know what? Hey, can you go grab the kids for me? Because even though I want to be the one that goes to pick them up, I'm like, my husband's home from work already. So I'm going to ask him to go get him versus me have to like stop what I'm
True.
doing, pause and go pick him up. And old Darlene definitely would have been like, no, I just got to power through. I'm going to go pick up the kids. I'll come back and I'll work some more and then I'll make dinner. And now it's like, hey, can you take him to soccer tonight? Like, I just need some time for myself. I need to go take a
Good.
hot bubble bath and read a book. And so it's,
Maybe a glass of wine. I don't know.
yeah, some nights, yes, absolutely. But it took a while for me because I felt like I wanted to be like by nature, I'm such a helper, server, giver. Like that's
Mhm.
just kind of who I am. Like I'm the first one to if somebody says they need something, I'm like trying to figure out how to make it happen for them. But
Mhm.
I've had
Which is a lovely way to be,
yes.
but you got to care
And
for yourself.
I had to ask, I had to learn it. I heard a phrase and it's probably been like 5 or 6 years now that was if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to for myself? And I
Mm.
also learned that same day that the word no was a complete sentence. And there was
Yes.
something mind blowing for me and how I normally just how I think and how I show up and how I want to be there and serve and nurture. I'm like, I can just say no and not explain myself. That was huge. Cause usually I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, Brenda. Like, I'd love to help, but I have to blah, blah, like, and I would
Yep.
tell you all the reasons why I couldn't do it. Instead of
Right.
just saying, I'm so sorry, I'm not available.
Yes.
And then when I learned like I could say no, or if I say yes to this, what am I saying no to for myself? All of a sudden I was like, well, actually, this doesn't even connect to what I'm working on for myself or my goals or my values and like the things I'm trying to accomplish right now in the season of my life, whether it was personal stuff or if it was goals even for my business. Like,
Hmm.
saying yes to Um, I would say yes to be volunteering at the school and for the PTA or something. Yet when I did that, like all of a sudden, like my workload was so heavy that week that I was staying up until 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night working instead of having got it done earlier in the day so I could spend time with my family. And
Mhm.
I just felt like that pull. So I can see how so many women, like our health suffers because we're trying to be everything to everyone.
And don't say no enough.
And we don't say
And
no
we don't
enough.
say no
So
enough. Yeah.
when I say no now, like I feel like this like sense of almost, I don't know if it's pride's the right word, but I feel really good about it because I've considered it. I've put it through my questions and my filters for myself. And I'm like, it's okay to say no. Like I don't have to beat
Yeah.
myself up for saying no. Like that was big. So I don't know if somebody needs to hear that message. Like it's okay sometimes to say no, especially if it's not serving your goals and your vision and what you're trying to do. And, most of the people that listen to this podcast, they're either entrepreneurs who are running businesses or they're executive leaders inside of organizations and they lead busy lives. Like they have a lot that they're balancing on any given day. And how do we find what I call like harmony in that so
Mhm.
that we feel like we're in flow. We feel like we've got a rhythm that really works for us and we're saying yes to the things that light us up and no thank you to the things that are just not going to get us in a position to where we're headed in the right direction for what we're trying to do in life.
I
So
fully agree.
I,
Yeah.
I love like with your podcast, like you're focused on us hearing these stories because we're being impacted by them. Like when we speak up, it gives permission to other women to speak up and share their story and their message with the world as well, which is one of my I teach storytelling in my with my business clients and even my entrepreneur client or my executive clients too. Like, how do we share stories to get people to pay attention, to understand where
Mhm.
we're coming from? And so, hearing these types of stories from other women who are going through life and they may not have the same story, but each of us can pull like different nuggets and different pieces from it and really see how it's impacting us. As we start to kind of wrap things up, I'd love to hear like what's coming up next for the podcast for Body Wealth. You gave us some prelude already, I know, with some of the stories, but like where do you see the podcast going and how can we join this mission to help more women, especially Black women, make sure they're getting the health care they need, the support they need, the encouragement and the love?
Thank you. One of the things that we did in the first 2 seasons of the podcast was after we had a conversation with a guest, then my sister Elaine and I would talk about our takeaways. What did we take away from that conversation? And we tried to keep it really short because we wanted the body of the episode to be their story and them sharing their story. So this year we hired a podcast producer to help us really professionalize and beef up the podcast. It's actually Nana from Hair Hub,
Okay.
who I found her through Hair Hub. And one of the things she said was that the takeaways, the conversation between Elaine and me about our takeaways was really valuable and that a lot of guests liked that and they wanted more of that because we were trying to keep it really short. Here's my 2 takeaways. And so what we're doing for season 3 is we're actually going to have some takeaway episodes
Ooh,
where we sort of debrief and discuss more in depth what we're going to do differently based on having heard this woman's stories or what it brought up for us and what we're reminded of. So those have been really fun to record. I'm flying to Durham tomorrow, which is where Elaine lives, for us to record some more takeaway episodes for season 3. So that's really exciting. And we'll see how that goes. I mean, one of our beliefs is continuous improvement. So
yeah,
we're going to try it for season 3. If it doesn't work out or people don't like it, then we won't do that in season 4.
yeah.
Um, what was your second question? I'm sorry. You
I don't
said
even remember
what's
at this point.
coming.
Like, what's coming? What are you excited about? And like, how can we support? I guess is probably what I said.
Listen and subscribe is how you can support. I mean, that's really the key is um, we proved the concept. We proved that people want to hear these stories. Now we're going to be pursuing some supporters, some
Yeah.
sponsors, and people can sponsor episodes or people can sponsor whole seasons. And so the way we can really get sponsors excited about Body Wealth is to show them those good subscriber numbers, listeners numbers.
Yeah.
We're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on YouTube, and in all those places you can rate the show. We've got 5 out of 5 star ratings on all those places, but you can write a review. Those are ways that people can support the podcast.
Awesome. And definitely check out the Body Wealth podcast and leave those reviews, because as a podcast host myself, I just know how darn valuable they are. When you hit subscribe and follow and leave the review, like it actually does bump it up in the algorithm so more people can find us and more people can hear our message and get the support and the care they need. And we all need some body wealth. We all need some extra
Yes.
love at this point in life. I got a couple of rapid fire questions for you before we head out. I would love to hear, if I could buy you a plane ticket to anywhere in the world today, where would you go and why?
Tanzania. It's been on my bucket list for a long time. I have a couple of friends who are from Tanzania. I
Okay.
love Tanzanian food, but I want to go on safari. I want to just, see. I've been to many countries in Western and Southern Africa. I've never been to East Africa. So that's on my bucket list, Tanzania.
I love that. I love that you even brought that up, because I literally just got an email 2 or 3 days ago from my kids' soccer group, and they're looking for donations for like soccer cleats and shin guards and stuff, and it's going to Tanzania, like
Oh,
that's where it's all
cool.
being sent over to. So I love when like something pops up a couple of times in your life and you're like, oh, I need to pay attention to this. Like maybe I need
Yeah.
to help you. Maybe
If
we can
you
go
hear
together.
Tanzania a third time this week, then you got to
Yeah,
donate.
we're going. We're booking a ticket. We're going. We'll hand deliver the soccer cleats ourselves. That's awesome. And are you binge watching anything right now, or is there a book that you're cuddled up in bed reading right now? Anything that really is
I just
kind of
went to a book talk last night with my niece. The book is called Gather Me by Glory Edom. So Glory Edom, I know she started the Well-Read Black Girl. So she has a book club that looks at Black women writers and discusses their books, right? And so she just wrote a memoir, and the structure of the memoir is she talks about a book she read, like The Catcher in the Rye, and then talks about what was happening in her life when she read it and what was meaningful to her there. So the structure of the book is all of these chapters about books and what they meant to her in her 35 years of living, or how, I don't know how old she is. So I'm reading that, and I just got it last night, so I can't tell you a lot, but the book talk was great, and she's just so smart. And my takeaway from last night was from her was forgive people who you feel have done hard things to you in the past so that you can move on.
Yes. Oh, that's such a good thread. I love that. So good. Forgive them. Yeah. How often do we hold on to the resentment or keep that anger, and then it just holds us back? And half the time they don't even know they did it, or they're like so in their own world, they didn't even know that they impacted us, and yet we
Yeah,
hold
and
on to
you're
those
still
things.
carrying it around in your
Yes.
head and your body, right?
Yeah, mostly in your body.
Yeah.
Like, let's let
Mhm.
it go. I love that. And my last question for you. When Brenda needs to reset, reflect, recharge, what do you like to do? Where do you like to go? What does that look like for you?
Well, travel, travel with my family. We just last month went to Portugal with our children. And even though our children are grown, I'm committed to annual family vacations. As long as they're
I
willing
would
to go
too.
on vacation with me, we will go on annual family vacations. Because even when they come home for Christmas or whatever, that's great, but that's like busy, busy, lots of other things happening. When you go to a new place that none of you have been and you're all there together, it's just special. And just hanging out on the beach, and you get just like your walks with your son. Those are the moments where you can have these really deep conversations that won't come up in every day when you're running around at home.
Absolutely. I love that. Yeah. More travel, more seeing the world, more family quality time. I am in it. Thank you, Brenda. Well, I am so glad we got a chance to have you on the show and hear about your podcast and what Body Wealth is doing. I know you're on a movement to impact so many lives and really help support and encourage Black women to take care of themselves and just,
And all women,
and all
everyone
women.
can listen.
Oh,
Yeah.
I know all women, but like I love that you're hyper niched and you're really focusing on that group too. Like I know it's powerful, and Can't wait to see what season 3 brings. It's already on my I'm subscribed list on my podcast for Apple. So I definitely see when the new episodes pop up. So I can't wait to dive in and hear the full stories from what you shared today with us. And I know it's the Body Well podcast. The links are going to be in the show notes below. Any
Okay.
last thoughts before we wrap today?
This was really fun. I appreciate you allowing me to have this conversation with you, and I just wish you all the best. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brenda. All right, everybody, that's another wrap of the Attract and Stand Out podcast. As always, remember that I believe in you. You're allowed to stand out. You're allowed to shine. You're allowed to be you. Hit subscribe, leave a review, and then head over to Body Wealth and do the same. And we will see you all soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye.